Faith without action is a wish. Action without faith is a struggle. But when the two are joined together, something remarkable is born, miracles. I have lived long enough and walked through enough storms to know this truth. Faith alone will make you dream, but it will not put bread on the table. Action alone will make you sweat, but it will not sustain you when the odds are against you. The secret, the hidden power, lies in their union. Faith gives action direction. Action gives faith form. When the two march side by side, the impossible bends and the world yields. I was not born into wealth, nor into privilege. I did not have doors opened for me. What I had was belief. Belief that a higher order governed this world, that if I moved with discipline, with vision, with trust in something beyond my sight, the results would come. I woke before the sun. I calculated. I worked. But without faith, my labor would have been empty. It was faith that turned exhaustion into endurance, that made risk feel like opportunity, that gave me the calm to act when others hesitated. Consider a man who waits for everything to be perfect before he takes a step. He says he is planning, preparing, calculating. In truth, he is afraid. His faith is too small. Then consider another who runs wildly without thought, burning energy in every direction, desperate for success but never reaching it. His action lacks purpose. Both men remain stuck, prisoners of their imbalance. The one who believes but does not move is a dreamer. The one who moves but does not believe is a wanderer. But the one who believes and moves, he is unstoppable. Faith must not be confused with fantasy. Faith is not wishing on the wind. It is conviction, so strong that it shapes your behavior. If you truly believe that your efforts are guided, that your vision is possible, then every action reflects that belief. You rise earlier, you endure longer, you do not quit at the first obstacle, because you know something greater stands behind your work. And when you act in alignment with that conviction, doors open that seemed forever closed. People appear who once ignored you. Opportunities surface that others swear did not exist. This is not coincidence. This is faith plus action, turning invisible possibilities into visible results. I remember days when oil prices collapsed, when investments turned to ash, when doubt whispered that perhaps it was over. In those moments, faith was my compass. I reminded myself no man controls the tides of fortune, but every man controls his response. Faith kept me calm, but action carried me forward. I did not wait for conditions to improve. I acted, I adapted, I pressed on, and what seemed like defeat became foundation. What looked like ruin became renewal. Faith gave me the vision to see beyond the setback. Action gave me the strength to climb out of it. Do not misunderstand, miracles are not lightning bolts from the sky. They are built, brick by men and women who believe and move. A miracle is the factory that rises where there was once an empty field. A miracle is the fortune born from a single dollar wisely invested. A miracle is the life transformed by discipline and devotion. They are not accidents, they are the inevitable outcome of faith married to action. Think of a seed. You may believe it can grow into a tree, and indeed that belief is correct. But if you never plant it, never water it, never give it the conditions to live, the tree will never appear. Your faith alone cannot force it from the soil. On the other hand, if you plant seeds in barren ground with no conviction, they will flourish. You may dig them up at the first sign of delay. You may abandon them too soon. Action alone cannot guarantee harvest. But when you plant with faith, when you water with faith, when you labor knowing the tree already exists in potential, then time itself becomes your ally, and the miracle of growth appears. Too many people surrender before they begin. They say, I will act when I am certain. But certainty never comes before movement. Certainty is the child of faith. You step into the unknown, not because the path is lit, but because you trust that each step will reveal the ground beneath you. And when your foot touches firm earth where there was once only darkness, you understand that is the miracle, not magic, not chance, but the inevitable gift given to those who dare to believe and to act. I did not wait for approval. I did not wait for someone to guarantee success. I believed, and I moved, and the world in time bent to that belief. You must do the same. Whatever vision burns inside you, Whatever calling stirs in your heart, give it both faith and action, nurture it with belief, strengthen it with discipline. Then watch how circumstances shift, how opportunities arise, how people are drawn to you. They will call it luck, they will call it fortune, but you will know the truth. It is the miracle that comes only to those who join faith with action. This is the first law I learned, the foundation upon which every achievement rests. Do not separate the two. Believe and move, trust and labor, see the unseen, and then work until it is seen. When faith and action unite, the world itself conspires to assist you. This is not a theory, it is not a sermon. It is a law of life. I lived it, and if you choose, you can live it too. Faith is the fire, but action is the hammer that shapes destiny. I learned early that belief, no matter how strong, demands proof in the form of labor. The man who kneels in prayer, but never rises to toil, will remain where he is. The man who works without belief will labor endlessly, yet build nothing of permanence. But the man who prays with conviction, then rises to act with relentless focus, he becomes a force that the world cannot ignore. That is how miracles unfold. Not in the waiting, not in the wishing, but in the union of inner certainty with outer effort. I remember when I was a young clerk, earning small wages, many around me scoffed at ambition. They believed men like us were destined for mediocrity, that wealth was reserved for others born into it. But I carried within me a vision larger than my circumstance. Faith told me there was more ahead, that the world was filled with opportunities disguised as labor, hidden in the soil of discipline. Yet I did not sit idle waiting for fortune to come knocking. I accounted every penny. I studied late into the night. I disciplined myself with small acts of thrift and order. Faith gave me the conviction that these small acts mattered. Action made those acts multiply into foundations for greater things. Faith without action is like a lamp with no oil, bright for a moment, then dark. Action without faith is like a ship without a compass, moving but never arriving. The miracle is not in believing alone or working alone. It is in the man who sees the invisible with faith and chisels it into reality with action. Such a man does not need luck. He creates results where none seemed possible. When doubt whispers, faith answers. But when fear shouts, action silences it. Too many allow fear to paralyze them, convincing themselves that faith means waiting for perfect timing. There is no perfect timing. There is only now. Faith sees the future. Action seizes the present. Together they meet in the only place miracles are born, the moment you decide and move. I recall the oil fields when others laughed at the idea that fortunes could be drawn from the earth. To most, the ground looked barren, the effort too great, the risk too high. Yet faith allowed me to see beneath the surface, to envision the hidden rivers of black gold waiting for the hand disciplined enough to reach for them. But seeing alone was not enough. I organized, I negotiated, I invested when others hesitated. Faith showed me the treasure, action unearthed it, and what others dismissed as folly became the foundation of industries, the rise of enterprises that transformed the world. You must understand this. Faith makes you calm when others panic, but action makes you advance while others remain frozen. Faith steadies the heart, action builds the path. Without both, your journey collapses. Think of a farmer. He believes the earth will yield, that is his faith. But if he never tills the ground, never plants the seed, never labors through sun and storm, his belief is wasted. And if he labors without belief, every setback will break his spirit. He will abandon the field before the harvest. Only the farmer who believes and acts tastes the fruit of his labor. Faith is tested most in moments of silence, when results do not appear quickly. Many abandon their path then, they pray, but when their prayers are not answered in their time, they quit. But miracles do not unfold on demand, they unfold in alignment with persistence. You must keep moving, even when you do not yet see the outcome. Faith whispers, it is working. Action proves it true, and in time, what once seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Consider the man who faced rejection after rejection, who heard no after no, who was told to stop dreaming. If he relied on faith alone, he would retreat to his imagination, comforted by visions, but never changing his life. If he relied on action alone, he might burn himself into exhaustion, chasing without direction. But when he joined the two, holding firm to belief while continuing to knock on doors, to refine his craft, to endure the ridicule, eventually one door opened, and that single opening justified every step, every act, every moment of belief. That door became his miracle.
I cannot overstate this truth. Faith must guide you. Action must build for you. One without the other is incomplete. Together they are unstoppable. I built enterprises not because I was the cleverest man, but because I believed with unshakable conviction in a vision and worked tirelessly in alignment with it. Faith gave me the courage to start. Action gave me the strength to continue. And their union produced results that others called extraordinary, though to me, they were the natural harvest of divine law. When you face the weight of doubt, remind yourself your vision is already alive in the unseen. Faith sees it, but action brings it into the visible world. Every stroke of the hammer, every word spoken in discipline, every risk taken with courage, it is faith expressing itself through movement. Do not wait. Do not sit idle, thinking belief alone will save you. Miracles belong to the bold. Believe deeply, move decisive. The world will bend to that union. And when others ask how you achieved what seemed impossible, you will know the answer. Not luck, not chance. It was the law I lived by. Faith plus action creates miracles.
Faith is the blueprint. Action is the construction. One without the other leaves you with either an unbuilt dream or an empty shell. I came to understand this not from books or theory, but from life itself. I was not a man who could afford to drift. Every decision mattered. Every step had consequence. Faith gave me the courage to believe that my life could rise higher than the circumstances of my birth. Action turned that belief into the scaffolding upon which I climbed. There were days when the weight of uncertainty pressed on me like a stone. The markets trembled. Competitors circled like wolves, and men around me lost everything in a single season. I did not escape such storms. I walked directly into them. What kept me standing was faith, the calm assurance that even the fiercest winds could not uproot me if my foundation was solid. But I did not merely sit and hope the storm would pass. I acted. I adjusted accounts, secured agreements, tightened discipline. Faith steadied my hand. Action moved it. That is how miracles are made, not by avoiding the storm, but by building strength within it. The weak think miracles are luck. They see a man prosper and call it fortune. But they do not witness the endless nights of labor, the unwavering conviction that carried him through rejection after rejection. They do not see the faith that allowed him to rise every time he fell. And they do not see the small, deliberate actions taken daily that compounded into triumph. What they call luck is nothing more than faith directing action until the extraordinary appears. I remember vividly the moment I first loaned money to a neighbor at a young age. It was a small sum, insignificant to the world, but sacred to me. Faith told me that discipline with money, even pennies, could shape a future. Action made me record every detail, demand repayment and reinvest. That simple act, born of belief and diligence, was the seed of a habit that grew into vast enterprises. Miracles begin this way, in acts so small others dismiss them, but done with such consistency and faith that they multiply beyond imagination. Faith is not a passive comfort, it is an active force. It demands movement. To believe is to commit, to align every part of your being with the vision you hold. If a man says he has faith in the harvest yet never sharpens his plow, never bends his back to the field, his faith is a lie. But the man who sharpens, tills, sows, and waters, because he believes the harvest is certain, he is the one who reaps. Miracles are not gifts handed to the idle. They are rewards granted to those who believe enough to act. The world is full of voices urging delay. Wait until you are ready, they say. But readiness never arrives in the way men expect. If I had waited until every condition seemed favorable, I would still be waiting. Faith told me to begin with what I had. Action multiplied. Too many bury their dreams under the illusion of waiting for the perfect time. There is no perfect time. There is only faith in the unseen and action in the present. Together they create the perfect moment. I learned to see setbacks as signals rather than sentences. When a venture faltered, faith reminded me that failure was not final. Action pushed me to adapt, to refine, to try again with greater wisdom. Each disappointment carried within it the seed of instruction. Without faith, I would have abandoned the path. Without action, I would have remained broken. But by holding faith in one hand and action in the other, I turned stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And what others called defeat, I called tuition, the cost of learning on the road to miracles. Faith without works is like a bird with one wing. It may flap, it may strain, but it will never soar. Action without faith is like a machine running without fuel. It moves for a while but soon sputters into nothing. But when faith and action unite, you rise higher than the storm clouds. You endure longer than the machines of men. You create outcomes that defy calculation. This is the unseen law that governs success, whether in commerce, in relationships, or in life itself. When I stood before negotiations, I entered not with fear but with calm conviction. Faith whispered that the outcome would serve me if I moved wisely. Action made me choose words carefully, observe shrewdly, and press forward without hesitation. My adversaries often thought me lucky when contracts tipped in my favor. It was not luck, it was faith that gave me composure and action that gave me leverage. The miracle was not that agreements appeared, it was that I had prepared myself inwardly and outwardly to receive them. Too many are paralyzed by what they cannot see. They demand evidence before belief, results before effort. But the evidence comes only after the step is taken. The results come only after the work is done. I stepped when the ground ahead was dark, trusting it would appear beneath my feet. Each time it did, my faith deepened, my resolve sharpened, and my actions became bolder, more decisive. This cycle is how a man builds miracles one stone at a time, until the edifice of his life towers above the doubts of the world. So I tell you, do not waste your days waiting for signs. Do not waste your strength, acting without vision. Bind the two together. Believe with unshakable faith. Act with relentless discipline. And in time, what others call impossible will bow to your persistence. They will marvel at your rise, puzzled at your composure, unable to explain your success. But you will know, it was never luck, it was never accident. It was faith guiding action, action honoring faith. And from that union, miracles were born. Faith gave me the vision, but discipline gave me the method. Action without order becomes wasted energy. I learned this lesson not in grandeur, but in the quiet details of daily life. As a boy, I recorded every cent I earned and every cent I spent. Many laughed at the smallness of such a practice. They could not see how faith sanctified those tiny numbers. I believed that if I mastered the little, the great would eventually come. And so I acted with meticulous care, day after day, building habits that would one day govern enterprises larger than the imagination of my youth. Miracles do not spring fully formed. They are shaped in silence, built in obscurity, forged in the furnace of discipline. Faith is not idle optimism. It is conviction so firm it dictates how you rise in the morning, how you work through fatigue, how you endure disappointment. Men speak of miracles as if they are sudden flashes of fortune, but the miracles I witnessed were slow, deliberate, patient. They were the result of faith sustained through years, married to action, repeated without fail. While others chased quick victories, I trusted in the steady accumulation of small gains. One penny wisely saved, one deal wisely made, one habit wisely kept. These, compounded over time, created outcomes so vast that the world called them miracles. I called them faith plus action, multiplied by discipline. I observed many men undone not by lack of talent, but by lack of steadiness. They believed in bursts, they acted in spurts, but they could not remain faithful when success delayed. They treated faith as a momentary firework, bright but brief. They treated action as a sprint, furious but unsustainable. Such men exhaust themselves, and when adversity comes, they collapse. I chose a different way. Faith for me was not a momentary fire, but a constant flame. Action, for me, was not a frantic rush, but a steady march. This combination, carried forward year after year, is what produced the miracles others thought sudden. When criticism surrounded me, faith kept my heart calm, but it was action that defended me. I did not respond with words but with results. I let my record speak louder than my rebuttals. Silence, backed by progress, was my answer to every doubt. This too is part of the law. When you act from faith, you do not need to argue with those who cannot see. Their disbelief is irrelevant. Miracles are not proved in debate.
They are proved in outcomes. There were times when fear whispered that I might lose all I had built. The markets are merciless. Fortunes are made and lost in days. Men around me, wealthy one week, were beggars the next. What shielded me was not luck, but preparation. Faith told me to expect storms. Action prepared me for them. I set aside reserves. I structured deals with care. I acted as though the day of trial was always near, and when it came, I did not collapse. While others panicked, I remained calm. That calmness, born of faith, made my actions sharper, clearer, more decisive, and so what destroyed many became opportunity for me. That is the miracle of preparation. Faith foresees, action secures. I cannot emphasize enough the power of patience. Faith is patient because it trusts that the outcome will come in its season. Action, guided by patience, does not rush or fall. It labors steadily, refusing to quit, refusing to be distracted by the noise of the world. Too many fail because they demand immediate results. When they do not appear, they abandon their path, calling faith foolish and action useless. They never see the miracle because they never stayed long enough for it to bloom. But the man who persists, whose faith keeps him steady, whose action keeps him moving, he cannot be denied. The world itself bends to his persistence. Imagine a river carving stone. To the eye it seems impossible. Water is soft, rock is hard, yet day after day, year after year the water flows, and the rock yields. That is how faith and action work together. Faith is the conviction that the stone can be shaped. Action is the steady current that presses against it. Time does the rest, and what seemed unmovable becomes transformed. Men call it a miracle. I call it inevitability. Faith is not arrogance. It is not believing you deserve reward without labor. It is the assurance that labor, guided by belief, will never be in. Every account I kept, every dollar I saved, every decision I weighed, these were my actions of faith. They were my daily testimony that I believed in a future that had not yet arrived. Others thought me overly cautious, too deliberate, but when the storms came, they found themselves empty-handed while I remained steady. That steadiness was not genius. It was faith turned into action. Action turned into habit. Habit turned into miracle. I often heard men curse their misfortunes, blaming fate, blaming society, blaming those richer than themselves. But such curses change nothing. Complaints are wasted energy. Faith transforms complaints into conviction. Action transforms conviction into progress. Every time you curse the darkness, you are wasting the chance to light a lamp. I chose to light lamps. I chose to believe that progress was possible, and to act in alignment with that belief, and so progress came. What I tell you is simple, but do not mistake simplicity for weakness. Faith plus action is a law, as certain as gravity. You need not wait for permission to use it. Believe in what is unseen. Act in what is before you. Do it daily. Do it patiently. Do it with discipline. The miracle will come, not because you are lucky, not because you are favored above others, but because you obeyed the law that governs growth. I obeyed it, and it changed my life. You can obey it, and it will change yours.
Faith is the anchor of the soul, but it is not meant to keep a man standing still. It is meant to hold him steady as he moves forward. Without faith, every wave of adversity knocks a man from his path. Without action, even the strongest faith remains a silent conviction, with no proof in the world. The law I discovered is unchanging. God blesses those who act upon their faith, who take steps when the ground is uncertain, who labor with hands guided by belief. Miracles are not the reward of idleness. They are the fruit of faith expressed through movement. When I was a boy, my mother taught me the value of prayer. She told me to trust the Lord, to put Him first in all things. I did not forget her words. But I also noticed she never sat waiting for blessings to fall from the sky. She worked. She stretched every coin to feed us. She saved what she could. She made sacrifices. That image stayed with me. Faith was her song, but work was her instrument. Together they played a harmony that shaped my spirit. I saw that God does not despise labor. He sanctifies it. The man who believes and acts honors both heaven and earth. I learned to rise early, to put my affairs in order before the sun fully greeted the sky. There was no glamour in it, no applause, but each morning I believed that diligence mattered, that order would produce fruit. My faith told me these invisible habits would bring visible results. My action confirmed it. Small records, small savings, small acts of discipline, none seemed miraculous on their own, but over time they formed the foundation of what others called miracles. This is the truth few want to hear. Miracles are built from the smallest bricks of faith and action, stacked daily until they rise into towers. In business, I faced men who mocked me for refusing to gamble recklessly. They called me too cautious, too slow. Yet my caution was not fear, it was faith. I believed that careful steps were stronger than reckless leaps. And so I acted with prudence, weighing risks, building reserves, refusing to be swept away by the fever of the crowd. Many who laughed at me found themselves ruined when fortunes turned. They acted without faith, driven by impulse. I acted with faith, guided by conviction. In the end, the miracle was not that I survived, but that I prospered while others fell. Faith also gave me strength to endure criticism. Men spoke harshly of me. They questioned my motives, my methods, my character. If I had no faith, their words would have shaken me. If I had no action, I would have wasted my life defending myself. Instead, I let faith quiet my spirit and let action write my answer. Results were my defense. The more I produced, the less their words mattered. This is a lesson worth holding. Faith gives you peace. Action gives you proof. Together they silence opposition without the need for argument. I did not pretend that my path was smooth. There were setbacks that cut deep. Ventures failed. Promises were broken. Plans collapsed. In those moments I remembered that my faith was not in perfect circumstances, but in divine providence, that even setbacks could be used for my growth. Faith told me not to despair. Action told me to get back up. I moved forward, scarred but not broken, wiser than before, and each time what looked like loss became seed for a greater harvest. This too is the miracle, that what men intend for harm can be turned to good when faith is steady and action persists. Some believe that to have faith is to sit quietly and wait for rescue. They misunderstand. Faith is not passive, it is courage to step forward when rescue seems far away. I believed that God would guide my path, but I never expected Him to walk it for me. My legs had to move, my hands had to labor, my mind had to calculate. Faith without action would have left me a dreamer. Action without faith would have left me a drifter. Together they made me a builder. I cannot separate my success from my I believed in order, in thrift, in discipline, because I believed God honored these virtues. My faith gave meaning to my work, and my work gave proof to my faith. Men sometimes asked how I stayed calm in chaos, how I made decisions with such clarity. The answer was simple. I trusted that if I did my part, God would do His. That trust made me bold enough to act, even when the outcome was uncertain, and time proved it true. The world called it miracle. I called it the reward of faith, married to action. Even now, when I reflect on my life, I see the pattern. Every advance began with belief that something unseen could be real. Every success was born of labor, aligned with that belief. I did not wait for certainty. I created it by stepping forward. Each miracle was not a lightning strike from heaven, but the slow unfolding of a law as old as time. What you believe and act upon becomes. It may not come in the way you expect. It may not come in the time you desire, but it will come if you do not quit. So I say to you, do not dishonor faith by making it idle. Do not dishonor action by making it blind. Hold them together. Believe deeply, then act boldly. Trust God's hand, then use your own. Let your life be proof that miracles are not rare. They are the natural harvest of faith plus action. This is how I lived. This is how I overcame. This is how you too can shape destiny. Faith shows its true worth not in times of ease, but in moments of trial. Anyone can believe when the sun shines and the path is smooth. The test comes when the storm descends,
when every calculation turns against you, when those around you tremble and retreat, it is then that faith becomes the anchor that keeps a man from drifting into despair. But even in such moments, faith alone is not enough. You must act, you must move with steady hands, with a mind unshaken by fear. Only then do you transform crisis into opportunity and difficulty into triumph. I have lived through such storms. The oil market was not kind, nor was it predictable. Prices soared one day and collapsed the next. Fortunes were gained in a season and lost in a night. Many men of great talent and great ambition fell because they panicked when the ground shifted. Their faith was shallow, their action frantic. They reacted to fear instead of responding with conviction. I saw in those times that miracles are not given to the restless but to the steady. Faith must hold you calm, action must guide you forward. If either fails, the storm swallows you whole. When the tide turned against me, I reminded myself of this truth. I could not control the winds, but I could control my sails. Faith told me the storm would pass, that the world was not ending simply because conditions worsened. Action made me adjust my course, trim my sails, conserve my strength. Many cried out in despair, paralyzed by what they could not change. I chose instead to act in what I could control. That is the secret of surviving pressure. Faith steadies your spirit, action directs your energy. Together they carry you through what seems impossible. There were nights when I lay awake knowing that a single wrong move could undo years of labor. Competitors plotted, markets shook, banks tightened. Fear was all around, but I did not let fear write my story. I remembered that no crisis was final, that Providence had carried me before and would carry me again. With that assurance I rose each morning with discipline. I did not lash out, I did not panic. I reviewed the numbers, studied the conditions, spoke with my men, and made careful decisions. Action gave form to my faith, and faith gave courage to my action. This union turned pressure into progress. I saw how men without faith crumbled. They clutched at every rumor, every promise of quick rescue. They wasted their strength chasing illusion. I saw how men without action collapsed as well. They sat frozen, muttering about fate, hoping salvation would arrive on its own. Both groups perished in the storm, but those who joined belief with labor endured. They bent, but they did not break. They suffered, but they emerged stronger. They saw the miracle of resilience born not from chance but from law. Faith plus action cannot be defeated by circumstance. Pressure is not the enemy, it is the forge. Just as steel is tempered by fire, so is character tempered by trial. Faith is what keeps you from shattering in the heat. Action is what shapes you into something stronger. Each crisis I endured left me harder, sharper, more disciplined, and when the pressure eased, I stood ready to advance while others were still licking their wounds. That readiness, that resilience, is itself a miracle. Consider the man who panics in difficulty. He makes rash decisions, burns bridges, exhausts his resources. His lack of faith magnifies his fear. His undisciplined action multiplies his mistakes. He is defeated before the battle is over. Now consider the man who has faith but no action. He comforts himself with words, telling himself things will improve, but he never adjusts his sails. The storm batters him until his vessel sinks. But the man who believes that the storm cannot end him, and who acts daily to steer, to adapt, to endure, that man survives. He may not avoid the storm, but he emerges from it stronger than he entered. That is the miracle of pressure transformed into strength. I did not escape criticism in these times. Some said I was too calm, that I lacked urgency. They mistook steadiness for passivity. In truth, I was never still. I moved constantly but with purpose. I acted not in panic but in strategy. Faith kept me from flinching. Action kept me advancing. Others wasted themselves in frantic movements that led nowhere. When the storm passed, I was still standing, and because I was standing, I was ready to build while they were still rebuilding. Understand this: you will face pressure in your life. It is not a question of if but when. You cannot choose your storms, but you can choose your response. If you have faith, you will not be shaken by fear. If you have action, you will not be paralyzed by doubt. Together they will give you composure under fire, and that composure will set you apart from the multitude. People will look at you and wonder how you remain calm, how you move with clarity when others falter. They will call it mystery, perhaps even luck, but you will know the truth. It is faith plus action at work. I tell you now, prepare before the storm. Do not wait until the winds rise to strengthen your faith. Do not wait until the waves crash to discipline your action. Build them daily in the calm so that when pressure comes, you are already trained. Faith will steady your heart, action will guide your hands, and when the world shakes, you will remain unshaken. That is the miracle the world admires but seldom understands.
There is a weight that crushes most men, the weight of control they never truly possess. They cling to outcomes, to expectations, to the illusion that the world must bend to their will in every detail. When events defy them, they shatter. They curse fortune, they despair, they quit. I learned long ago that faith is not the demand that life unfold according to my desires. Faith is the trust that even when life does not go as planned, a greater order is at work. Action, then, is not wasted in resistance to what I cannot change. It is directed toward what I can, and when faith and action stand together under this truth, the result is freedom. I witnessed men break because they gripped too tightly. They built empires on fragile expectations, and when the winds shifted, they fought desperately to hold everything in place. Their fear of loss destroyed them faster than loss itself. I chose a different path. When circumstances fell beyond my control, I released them. I did not waste strength on what was already out of my hands. Faith assured me that no single setback could end me. Action focused on the next step I could take. This posture, surrender joined with effort, is what allowed me to move forward while others drowned in despair. There was a time when investments crumbled and ventures dissolved before my eyes. The temptation was to rage, to cling, to fight the inevitable, but I knew anger would not change reality. Faith reminded me that loss was not final. Action told me to rebuild, to redirect, to plant again, and so I let go of what could not be salvaged and focused on what could. In time, the ground I thought barren produced richer fruit than what I lost. This is the miracle of letting go. When you cease grasping at what has already passed, your hands are free to build anew. Many confuse detachment with indifference. They think to let go is to stop caring. That is not so. I cared deeply about my work, my family, my responsibilities, but I cared wisely. I did not allow my peace to be stolen by events beyond my reach. If oil prices fell, I adjusted, but I did not despair. If partners betrayed me, I mourned the loss, but I did not abandon my path. Faith anchored me in the belief that God governs the greater story. Action kept me engaged with the tasks at hand. Together they gave me resilience. Consider the river. It does not fight the rocks it encounters. It does not demand the mountain move out of its way. It flows around obstacles, adjusting its course, and in time it carves valleys through stone. That is how faith and action operate when joined with surrender. Faith assures you that the flow will reach its destination. Action keeps you moving forward even if the path bends. Letting go of control does not mean weakness. It means wisdom. It means refusing to exhaust yourself in battles you cannot win, and instead directing your strength to the progress you can make. The strongest men I knew were not those who dominated every detail. They were those who knew when to hold and when to release, when to act and when to wait. They trusted in providence to handle what was beyond their sight. Their faith made them calm. Their action made them effective, and because of this, they endured when the controlling men collapsed. True strength is not in the iron grip. It is in the steady hand that knows what to hold and what to set free. I cannot tell you how many opportunities I gained, simply because I did not waste my spirit on bitterness. Others held grudges, replayed betrayals, obsessed over failure. I chose to let them go. Faith told me that resentment chained me to the past. Action reminded me that forward was the only direction that mattered, and so I pressed on. My refusal to be bound by yesterday created the space for tomorrow's miracles. Faith without surrender becomes anxiety. You claim to believe, yet you torment yourself over every outcome. Action without surrender becomes futility. You labor endlessly,
But because you resist what you cannot change, your work exhausts you without reward. But when faith and action are joined with the wisdom to let go, you find peace. You move with clarity. You are no longer at war with reality, and in that peace, miracles grow. There were contracts I lost, negotiations that slipped away, ventures that failed despite every effort. I could have raged against them, but what would that have gained me? Instead, I let them go and turned my effort toward new soil. In time, I gained far more than I lost. The world will test you with disappointment. It will strip things from your grasp. Do not collapse in despair. Hold your faith. Continue your action. Release what is beyond you and focus on what is before you. This is not weakness, it is mastery. So I say to you, stop clinging to illusions of control. Stop exhausting yourself in battles you cannot win. Place your trust in providence. Believe that setbacks can become seeds, that losses can become lessons, that endings can become beginnings. Then act upon that belief. Do what you can with discipline, with patience, with courage. Let go of the rest. The miracle is this: when you stop grasping for what is gone, your hands are free to receive what is coming. Faith will make you calm, action will make you ready, and surrender will make you free. That is how miracles are born, from letting go. The world is full of noise. Men shout to be heard, scramble to prove themselves, rush to fill every silence with words. They believe that constant speaking is strength, that loudness is authority, that endless explanation is power. I learned the opposite. True strength does not need to shout. True authority does not need to prove. Silence, when guided by faith and backed by action, becomes a weapon sharper than any argument. I have sat in rooms where rivals poured out their words, boasting, threatening, convincing themselves that their noise was dominance. I remained silent. They mistook my stillness for weakness. Yet while they revealed their fears and their intentions, I studied, I listened, I calculated. Faith told me I did not need to answer every word. Action told me to prepare my move in quiet. When the moment came, I acted with precision, and while they wasted themselves in noise, I secured what I came for. That is the miracle of silence. It unsettles your opponent and steadies you. Faith gives silence its strength. Without faith, silence feels like fear, like surrender. But when you truly believe that your worth is not determined by the opinions of others, you no longer feel the need to defend yourself at every attack. You can stand calm while others accuse, criticize, or mock. Silence becomes proof of composure, and action, taken at the right time, becomes the only answer needed. A contract signed, a deal closed, a result achieved. These speak louder than 1,000 words. I recall many moments when I was insulted in public. The natural urge for most is retaliation, to strike back with words or anger. But I saw no profit in such displays. My faith told me that insults could not harm me unless I allowed them inside. My action was to continue forward, to build, to achieve. Soon enough, those same critics were forced to reckon with my results. What greater reply could there be? This is why silence is powerful. It robs the aggressor of the reaction they crave, and turns the energy back upon them. Silence also exposes truth. When you speak less, you hear more. You notice the tremor in a man's voice, the contradiction in his words, the hesitation in his tone. While he rushes to fill the air, you gather information. Faith tells you that patience will reveal what noise conceals. Action uses that knowledge when the time is right. Many of my greatest decisions were made not by what I said, but by what I heard in silence. I do not mean that one must never speak. Words have power, but only when used with discipline. The man who speaks sparingly ensures his words carry weight. When you rarely speak, people lean closer to hear you. When you finally give voice, your words are measured, intentional, like arrows aimed at the heart of the matter. Faith keeps you from wasting words. Action ensures that when you do speak, your words are supported by results. Together, they make silence an ally rather than an emptiness. Consider a negotiation. One side makes an offer, then waits. Most men rush to reply, eager to justify, to argue, to secure the upper hand. But silence stretches, and in that space the other side grows uneasy. They begin to second-guess themselves. They fill the silence with better terms, with concessions, with explanations. All the while you remain calm, letting their own noise weaken their position. This is not manipulation for its own sake, it is discipline. Faith gives you the calm to endure the silence. Action gives you the foresight to use it wisely. The miracle is that by saying nothing, you gain more than words ever could. The same principle applies in personal conflict. When provoked, the weak man lashes out, he reveals his insecurity, he gives his opponent power. The strong man, however, remains silent. His composure unsettles the other. They wonder what he is thinking, why he is not reacting, whether he is stronger than they imagined. Silence creates mystery. Mystery creates influence. Influence creates power, and that power is not loud. It is quiet, steady, undeniable. Noise often comes from desperation. The loudest in the room are usually the weakest. They seek validation. They fear being overlooked. They attempt to prove themselves by volume, but the man of faith has no need for such display. He knows his worth. He knows his path. He trusts that results, not noise, will establish him, and so he saves his energy for action. He builds while others boast. He works while others argue, and in time, his silence becomes victory. I have always believed that moving quietly is superior to announcing loudly. Faith assures me that I do not need recognition for every step. Action assures me that progress will eventually reveal itself. While others are busy seeking applause, I am busy making gains. By the time they notice, the work is already done. This is why I tell you, stop announcing your plan. Stop wasting your voice on those who will never understand. Believe deeply, work silently, act with discipline. Let your results speak in thunder when the time comes. That is the miracle of silence turned into power. So understand this. Silence is not weakness, it is strength contained. It is faith, refusing to be rattled. It is action, conserving its energy for decisive moments. When you master silence, you master yourself, and when you master yourself, no one can master you. Let others waste their breath, let them scramble for attention. You will remain calm, silent, steady, and when you act, the world will know you not by your noise but by your undeniable result.
The mind is the battlefield where victories are first won or lost, before fortunes are built, before enterprises rise, before any visible success takes shape. The struggle begins within. If a man cannot govern his own thoughts, he cannot govern his actions. If he cannot govern his actions, he cannot govern his destiny. Faith steadies the mind, action trains it. Together they forge a discipline so strong that nothing from the outside can shake it. I did not wake each day with perfect calm. Doubts whispered, fears pressed against me, temptations to delay or to surrender knocked at my door as they do for every man, but I refused to let them reign. Faith reminded me that my life was guided by something greater than momentary emotion. Action demanded that I rise and move regardless of how I felt. Each time I chose discipline over comfort, I trained my mind, and with each repetition, I grew stronger, steadier, less shaken by the storms of life. Mental strength is not born in the grand moments. It is built in the smallest choices, rising early when sleep tempts you, saving when spending calls louder, listening when speaking would be easier, holding composure when anger burns within. Each of these acts seems small, but repeated daily they train the mind like steel being forged in fire. Faith tells you such habits matter. Action proves it by doing them until they become second nature. The miracle is not that discipline suddenly appears. It is that discipline grows, quietly but relentlessly, until it becomes unbreakable. I have seen men of brilliant talent undone because they never mastered themselves. Their intellect was sharp, but their will was soft. At the first sign of resistance, they faltered. At the first taste of criticism, they collapsed. They never trained their minds. They thought success was born from gifts alone. It is not. It is born from the mind that endures, the spirit that persists, the will that acts faithfully day after day. Faith alone cannot give you such will. Action alone cannot sustain it. Only together do they create a mind unshakable by circumstance. There were days when failure struck hard, when ventures unraveled, when people betrayed my trust. The easy path would have been despair, surrender, indulgence in self-pity, but I refused it. Faith whispered that every failure carried a lesson. Action forced me to extract it, to adjust, to continue. I treated failure not as a verdict, but as instruction. This mindset was not natural at first. It was trained. Each time I refused to drown in emotion, each time I chose composure over panic, I strengthened the walls of my mind. Over time I became calm not by chance, but by conditioning. That is the miracle of training. The man you become tomorrow is the product of the habits you practice today. The mind, like the body, craves ease. It seeks comfort, indulgence, escape. Left unchecked, it will lead you into ruin. Faith tells you there is higher purpose, something beyond immediate pleasure. Action teaches the mind to obey that higher call. Every time I denied waste, every time I chose order, every time I pushed beyond fatigue, I trained my thoughts to serve me rather than enslave me. A man ruled by his impulses is a slave. A man who rules his impulses is free. Freedom comes not from doing whatever you please, but from having the strength to do what must be done. People often marveled at my composure, asking how I remained so calm under pressure. The answer was simple. I had trained for it. Composure does not appear in the crisis unless it has been practiced in the quiet. Just as a soldier drills before battle, a man must train his mind before the test arrives. Faith gives him the vision of who he can be. Action turns that vision into habit, and when the crisis finally comes, he does not crumble. He stands firm, because he has rehearsed his response long before. This is why I tell you, do not wait for challenges to test your strength. Train daily. Take small disciplines seriously. Guard your mind from waste. Feed it with truth. Direct it with purpose. Refuse to indulge every emotion or impulse. Each time you do, you are building invisible strength. You may not see the miracle immediately, but when pressure comes, you will discover it. You will find yourself calm when others panic, steady when others collapse, decisive when others freeze. That is the fruit of faith, plus action in the training of the mind. There were men who thought my habits excessive, my records, my thrift, my patience. They mocked the seriousness with which I treated small sums, small tasks, small details, but those small acts trained me. They taught my mind to respect order, to resist waste, to value discipline, and when greater responsibilities came, I was ready. The miracle was not that I suddenly possessed the strength for great tasks. It was that faith and action in the small things prepared me for the great. So understand this. Greatness begins within. Miracles are not born from chance, but from the mind forged by faith and strengthened by daily action. Train yourself now. Master your thoughts, your impulses, your responses. Believe that you can. Act as if you must, and repeat until it becomes who you are. In time you will find yourself unshaken by storms, unmoved by critics, unbroken by failure, and others will marvel at your composure, calling it mystery. But you will know the truth. It is the miracle of a mind trained by faith and perfected through action. Real power does not announce itself. It does not cry out for recognition or beg for applause. Real power moves quietly, steadily, as if it has nothing to prove, because it doesn't. I learned that the men who spoke the loudest often achieved the least. Their words were like smoke, filling the air, but leaving no substance behind. I resolved to live differently. Faith gave me the confidence to believe I did not need constant approval. Action gave me the means to produce results that spoke for themselves. Together, they taught me the greatest lesson of all. True miracles are not declared, they are demonstrated. When I began, I had little more than conviction and discipline. I did not tell the world what I would become. I did not waste time convincing others of my vision. I acted, quietly, relentlessly. I built one step at a time, often unnoticed. And then, one day, what was once invisible could no longer be ignored. This is the essence of moving in silence, to let the work grow until even your silence roars. Faith makes this possible. Without faith, silence feels empty. You fear that if no one sees your effort, it is waste.
You crave recognition to prove your worth. But faith reminds you that the unseen is just as real as the seen, that seeds grow underground before they rise into the light. Action, then, is the planting, the watering, the tending. In time, the fruit appears for all to witness. The miracle is that what once was doubted becomes undeniable, not because you spoke of it, but because you lived it. I often watched others squander their strength, announcing their every move. They told the world their plans, and in doing so invited resistance, envy and sabotage. I preferred to let my results appear suddenly, without warning. By the time others noticed, the foundation was already too strong to be shaken. Silence shielded me. Faith gave me patience. Action gave me progress. That trinity created outcomes that no one could stop. Even in negotiation, silence proved my ally. When others demanded answers, I delayed. When they pressed for reactions, I held my peace. Faith assured me that I did not need to rush. Action allowed me to wait strategically, to move only when advantage was certain. Many times, silence won me more than words ever could. They called it cleverness, but it was simply restraint born of faith and guided by action. The greatest leaders I studied were not men who wasted themselves seeking constant praise. They were men who worked in quiet, often misunderstood in their own time, only to be revered later for the strength of their results. Their miracles came not from noise but from persistence. I modeled myself after them. My faith told me that truth does not need to My action proved it by building quietly until the truth could not be denied. Understand this. Moving in silence is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is about conserving energy, protecting vision, and allowing action to do the speak. Every word you spend trying to prove yourself is energy lost from building yourself. Every boast you make gives away the element of surprise. Faith frees you from the need to prove anything. Action ensures that, in the end, proof is unnecessary because the results stand undeniable. I never sought to be the loudest man in the room. I sought to be the most effective, and effectiveness requires silence, discipline, and persistence. Faith gave me the courage to walk paths others doubted. Action paved those paths until they became roads others had no choice but to follow. By the time they realized what I had done, it was too late to oppose me. The miracle was not sudden victory. It was the quiet accumulation of steady steps, taken without noise until the mountain was moved. Let others chase attention. Let them waste themselves, seeking validation. If you would create miracles, walk in silence, believe deeply, act relentlessly, and allow time to reveal your progress. Do not fear being overlooked. Faith tells you that nothing done in discipline is wasted. Action ensures that sooner or later, your work will be seen, and when it is seen, it will be undeniable, not because you declared it, but because you embodied it. This is the final truth I leave you. Miracles are not conjured by words, they are created by faith, joined with action, expressed through silence, discipline, and persistence. Do not beg for recognition. Trust, build, endure, and when the results appear, the same world that doubted you will stand in awe. They will call it luck, fortune, providence, but you will know the truth. It was faith, it was action, it was silence, and from these, miracles were born.